Let's take a look at another CodeWars exercise. This one is pretty short, but it involves a few choices that could make a difference depending on the context. It's called emotional sort, and it gives you these happy and sad faces that we're going to rank from happy to sad, or the other way around, depending on this parameter order. And luckily, we don't have to implement the sort in detail. We don't have to go through the list and switch every two if they're not aligned and check it again and again. We just tell Python how and by what criteria. So it's probably going to be 2 steps. And the second step is going to look like this. We're going to say return sorted, and then sorted has a couple parameters. The first one is the thing you're sorting. We got a parameter called R, short for array. I always hate it when they do that, but it's pretty common. And then you tell it the key. The key is how we're ranking these. Are they by last name or, date of birth or whatever? And the last one is reverse, which is, are we going least to greatest or are we going greatest to least? That is, in this case, really simple, because we just take the order parameter sent to us from elsewhere. I might have to switch it if I end up making it the other way around, but we'll try to set it up that that's not necessary. So what's the key? Well, the key has to be a function or method, and we need to find a way to return a number or something sortable for each of these faces. I'm going to copy this into here and put them in quotes, because that's step 1. And then you could see it almost looks like a dictionary already. It's almost lined up the way keys and values would be. And I'm going to start with that. I think that's a good approach to this kind of thing. If we see there are 5, I'm going to count down 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And that means we're giving the higher numbers to the good ones, which I think is the way it should be. If we made it a list, that would be lower numbers for the good ones, 0 to 4, and then it would have to switch the order. We'd have to say reverse equals not order or some kind of ugly change. And then we got to give this a name if we're going to use it in a separate line. I'm going to call it scale. I think that sounds good to me, but it's not particularly specific. We could call it happiness, or we could call it rank, or we could call it something like that. Since these are so tiny, we could probably throw it in one line, which loses that 2-column chart look, but it does make the function nice and small. I can pretty much just put that in here. However, if we try to run it, it's not going to like that, because the key needs to be a function, or what they say is a callable. So something with parentheses after it. And a dictionary is not that. So we could make a little lambda function that looks in the dictionary with that key, or we could just use a dictionary method that already exists. There's a dictionary method called get, and get is not for this. It's not intended to be like, hey, you need a function, we've got one. It's intended to build in a default. So if we say get and then 0, we tell it that if you don't find this thing in the dictionary, no worries, we don't have to crash with an error. We can say, here's our default value of 0. And it just so happens that it works as a callable as well. So if I try this, it's perfect. It's going to work, and we're happy. I could turn it in and see the other solutions. I want to say that this is not perfect because first of all, that dictionary looks really ugly. If I were to scan this with my eyes, I wouldn't really be able to tell what the faces are. And another thing is, imagine we had an app and it gets updated every week with new faces. Maybe you get themes, with Halloween it's got scary ones or something. It would be pretty annoying to update this with new faces. If you've got one in the middle, like we've got one that's medium happy, medium sad, then you can't just add it to the middle. You've got to change the numbers of all the other guys to line up, right? Unless we add like a 2.5 in between the 2 and 3, and that would be just a mess. So if our situation involved changing it a lot, this dictionary would not be the greatest. We could put it in a list, and you'll see that some of the other solutions put it in a list. Like right here, they're using the index method, which is kind of like find on strings, where it looks for the first occurrence. And the problem with that is, since they copied the order, it starts with the good ones, but the good ones are lower ranked, so they have to say not order. And that's definitely confusing. If you send this Boolean to the function and you're thinking the other way, it's very easy to switch them back and forth, and I wouldn't want to work with that in real code. This person made a function to get the thing out of the dictionary. Another person did it with the lambda. And those are maybe better than the get method. It depends. Do you want an error when you look up something that's not in there? Or do you want to just move smoothly along with a none value? It depends on the situation. So while this is a pretty easy problem and we can write it in a couple lines, it has these considerations of like, what if we had to add more? What if we wanted an error? What if we didn't want an error? These kind of things make a difference. It's probably not a performance issue. I think the list, index, and the dictionary thing are about equally fast, especially with a small amount. But it could be important. And there's also other considerations, like, do you put it outside the function or do you put it inside? Maybe some other part of your program would want to look these up, and you could put it outside so that it's accessible. I don't know, just something to think about. And I wanted to show one that was different from all the for loops we've been looking at recently.